Max Verstappen and Red Bull looked untouchable after Miami. The paddock felt it, the timing screens proved it. Then the FIA moved. A new technical directive landed 48 hours ago, targeting a specific aerodynamic trick that powered their surge. This was not a warning. This was a ban with immediate effect, and it changes the entire championship picture. But here's what the paddock is not talking about. The data tells a completely different story. Red Bull's leap in Miami was not gradual, it was a jump of 0.33 seconds per lap in qualifying trim. Sector 2, the high-speed section, showed the biggest gain. Verstappen was nearly 0.2 quicker there alone, compared to his closest rival. That advantage came from a clever use of exhaust gases, redirecting heat and speed to stabilize the rear. It gave him confidence to push harder, longer. What no broadcast covered is this: that system is now restricted. The performance it created is at risk, and that is where this story gets complicated. Red Bull's engineers saw the directive coming. Weeks before the FIA's announcement, simulations were already running to model life without the system. Technical Directive 047-24 does not ban a part, it bans a principle. The wording targets exhaust gas manipulation for aerodynamic gain beyond propulsion. That phrase took months to craft. It was designed to close one specific loophole, not to punish a team, but for Red Bull, the effect is the same. The rear stability that made Verstappen's car so predictable now faces a new constraint, and when you remove a foundation the entire car was built around, the physics behind the ban are precise. Hot gases exiting the tailpipe at 900 degrees Celsius were angled to follow the diffuser ramp using the Coanda effect. This accelerated airflow under the car, creating extra downforce without adding drag. Wind tunnel data showed a 12% increase in rear efficiency at high yaw angles after Miami. That number explains the jump in Sector 2. What the data actually shows is that tire degradation improved by 8% because the rear slid less. But here's the complication. The FIA did not ban the exhaust. They banned how its energy could be used. That distinction changes everything. This is the part that changes everything. Red Bull did not just add a trick. They optimized the entire RB21 around it. The floor, the suspension, the beam wing, all worked in harmony with that exhaust flow. Remove one piece and the balance shifts. Nobody in that garage expected the change to be this immediate. The question now is not whether Red Bull can adapt, it is how fast. And to measure that speed, we must first see exactly what they gained in Miami. Miami was the turning point. Before that race, Red Bull's qualifying gap to second place sat at 0.28 seconds. After Miami, it jumped to 0.61 seconds. That is a 0.33 second leap in just 3 weeks. Sector 2 told the real story. Verstappen gained 0.19 seconds there alone against Lando Norris in qualifying. This was not a power increase. It was an aerodynamic stability gain. Adrian Newey hinted at it after the race. He said the biggest gains come from making the car feel predictable, not just fast. But here's what the paddock is not talking about. The numbers reveal a deeper pattern. Red Bull's tire wear rate dropped by 11% after Miami. That is not a small change. It means the rear of the car was sliding less, generating less heat, lasting longer. What no broadcast covered is this: that improvement came from the same exhaust system now under scrutiny. In 2014, Mercedes created a similar mid-season jump with their double ERS strategy. The gap closed once rivals understood the software logic. Championship math makes the stakes clear. A 0.35 second per lap deficit over a 55-lap race equals about 19 seconds. That is enough to lose 2 or 3 positions, translating to 12 to 18 points per race. And that is where this story gets complicated. This data changes how we view Verstappen's dominance. His ability to push harder, longer was not just raw skill. The car gave him a confidence others lacked. He could attack the limit because the rear did not surprise him. But confidence is fragile. When a car's behavior shifts even slightly, that trust erodes. The real story was never about the lap time. It was about the feedback loop between driver and machine. And now that loop faces its toughest test. To understand what Verstappen loses when the car changes, we must look at how he extracts performance in the first place. This data changes how we view Verstappen's dominance. His ability to push harder was not just raw skill. The car gave him confidence others lacked. But confidence is fragile. When a car's behavior shifts even slightly, that trust erodes. The real story was never about the lap time.
It was about the feedback loop between driver and machine, and now that loop faces its toughest test. Max Verstappen drives with absolute commitment. Late apex, early throttle, full power while turning. That technique demands one thing:
a rear end that never surprises him. The BANS system gave him exactly that. Consistent downforce across every throttle transition. But here's what the paddock is not talking about. When that consistency fades, even the best driver must change his approach, and change costs time. Inside Red Bull's reports, Verstappen's simulator feedback shaped the exhaust routing. Liam Hadjar also contributed as reserve driver. What no broadcast covered is this. That partnership created a feedback loop. Driver input refined the car, which enabled more aggressive driving, but the vulnerability is real. If rear balance varies by 3 to 5%, Verstappen's optimal line shifts. That hesitation costs 1 to 0. 15 seconds per lap. And that is where this story gets complicated. This was never just about a fast car and a great driver. It was about a symbiotic relationship that amplified both. But trust is built on predictability. When the car's behavior shifts, that trust must be rebuilt. The real story was never about the lap time. It was about what happens when the machine no longer speaks the driver's language. And to see how that ripple spreads, we must look beyond Red Bull. McLaren and Mercedes are ready. Andrea Stella stated it clearly. When the grid converges, consistency beats peak performance. McLaren's MCL39 loses less performance in high wind conditions. What no broadcast covered is this, that stability becomes a weapon when the frontrunner's advantage fades. This is the part that changes everything, but here's what the paddock is not talking about. Mercedes holds a different advantage. Their power unit's throttle response allows earlier exit acceleration. Tire strategy also shifts. With less rear stability, teams may favor harder compounds. Championship math makes the stakes clear. If Red Bull loses
2 seconds per lap while McLaren gains 0.1 seconds. The gap closes by 0.3 seconds. That is enough to make undercut strategies viable again. And that is where this story gets complicated. This convergence changes the entire dynamic.
Red Bull can no longer control the race from the front. They must react to moves from behind. Every pit window becomes a risk. The real story was never about one team losing performance. It was about what happens when multiple teams believe they can win, and that belief changes how they attack. To see how Red Bull responds, we must look inside their garage. Red Bull's garage is already moving. Adrian Newey reinterprets physics. He does not just replace parts. Wind tunnel data shows the latest RB21 testing and modified beam wing angle. Suspension kinematics are under review. But here's what the paddock is not talking about. After the 2023 Flexi Wing Directive, Red Bull recovered 80% of lost downforce within 2 races. That history matters now. CFD simulations suggest a recovery of 0.15 to 0. 20 seconds per lap is possible. But that requires perfect correlation between virtual and real-world testing. What no broadcast covered is this. Red Bull's innovation protocol is predefined. Every ban triggers a specific sequence of design reviews, but time remains the constraint. If recovery takes 3 races instead of 2, that is 45 to 60 championship points at risk. And that is where this story gets complicated. This adaptation race is not just technical, it is psychological. Every setup change gets questioned when the margin shrinks. The real story was never about the lost system. It was about whether Red Bull's process can outpace the field's momentum. And that question leads directly to the championship math that will decide everything. 3 paths now define this championship. If Red Bull adapts within 2 races, Verstappen's lead stays comfortable, but a 3 to 4 race window changes everything. McLaren or Mercedes could claim victories, shrinking the gap. Toto Wolff framed it perfectly. When performance levels equalize, strategy becomes the weapon, and strategy is where mistakes happen. But here's what the paddock is not talking about. The numbers reveal a crucial pattern. In seasons where the top 3 sat within 0.3 seconds per lap, the winner correlated 73% with the fewest strategic errors. What no broadcast covered is this. Mercedes' strategic depth becomes a championship asset in a converged field. Their ability to execute complex pit sequences could decide races where pure speed no longer separates contenders. And that is where this story gets complicated. This championship math reframes the entire battle. The question was whether Verstappen could adapt when the car was no longer perfect. The answer is not about his skill. That was never in doubt. It is about whether Red Bull's process can outpace the field's momentum. The real story was never about the lap time. It was about who controls the narrative when the script changes. Max Verstappen has faced this before. Every time his car encountered a challenge, he adapted faster than rivals expected. Red Bull's innovation cycle works the same way. They use constraints as catalysts for breakthroughs. The BANS system was never their true strength. It was a tool. But here's what the paddock is not talking about. History supports this view since 2010. Teams that recovered from mid-season setbacks won the title 68% of the time if they stayed within
2 seconds of the leader. Momentum in Formula One is not calculated. It is felt. Once it shifts, it rarely shifts back. What no broadcast covered is this. The ban did not expose weakness.
It revealed the true championship battle hiding beneath the dominance. This moment is a turning point. If Red Bull responds quickly, this becomes a temporary disruption. If they do not, this becomes the moment dominance ends. The real answer was never about the ban system. It was about what happens when advantage disappears. The ban did not end Red Bull's story. It just turned the page to find out if their greatest strength was ever the car at all.